EVs are inevitable.
Whether consumers know it or not, underpinning all of their concerns from reliability to residual values to safety is the battery.
There is no instruction manual on this. Nobody's done this in the past. We see EV battery solutions as a specialist area now. It won't. EV battery solutions will effectively converge into what we call business as usual. This is probably the biggest transformation or disruption in the automotive market space that we've had in years.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to Beyond the Battery, a new series from EV Battery Solutions, where we chat with industry experts about the biggest EV topics shaping the industry today. I'm your host, Erin Baker, and each episode I'll be joined by a different leader from the world of automotive and electrification. This week, I'm really pleased to welcome Martin Forbes, President of Cox Automotive International, to talk about what it really takes to evolve a global automotive services business for an electric future. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get into it. Martin, hello.
Erin, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you very much.
Good. You're fully branded up today. I like
I am
it.
fully branded up. However, I have to add, I am hugely impressed that you have a pair of Cox Automotive socks on.
I do. They're probably below the camera, but I'll give them a waggle later. I'm
Yeah.
always on brand, Martin.
I do love that. Yeah.
Good. Right, let's get into it. Could you begin by giving us a brief overview of your role and your background in the automotive industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, I'm the president of Cox Automotive International. What does that fundamentally mean? Well, as you know, we're a global automotive services business where predominantly the mothership or the HQ is the US. But my responsibility is effectively to look after all business activity that happens outside of the US. So if you think about that, where are our biggest markets? UK, Europe are probably our biggest markets. We have Australia and New Zealand. We have Brazil. But we also have interests in China and India where we sort of sit on and have minority interests so we can understand what's going on in the industry. But we would also have products more so on the digital side that could be up into sort of 100 countries or more. So we have a good footprint. But we don't obviously have people on the streets and businesses in all of those 100 markets. But the main ones are probably where we're focused is sort of continental Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Brazil.
Right, okay. And what's your background to all this?
So I've been with Cox Automotive now for 10 years or just over 10 years. I was not of the automotive industry before.
Right.
To my sins, I'm a chartered accountant. Probably even worse, I'm a tax accountant. I was one of the good guys. I was trying to save people money, not on the inland revenue where I was trying to take tax. So I sort of moved from there, and then I moved into industry. I actually went into digital media and advertising actually for a spell, and then came across and actually came into the automotive industry. But I first of all came into Cox Automotive looking after more of the retail and media assets that we had, and then since then kind of moved across and moved into more of then running effectively UK, then Europe, and then I was given the opportunity back in May 2020 to run our international organisation.
Okay. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think that is really great. I think the automotive industry needs more people coming in from outside of automotive or who aren't automotive specialists to provide kind of an outside fresh view of the way the industry should go.
Yeah, and you're right. And sometimes I've got to catch myself on that because obviously we look to hire people and hire new senior people into the organisation. I think sometimes the default is you want to hire people within the automotive industry, and you actually, to your point, you've got to say stop. Actually, you need different ways of thinking. If you think about how quickly now, I personally in the last maybe 10 years, even 5 years, how quickly the business is evolving, and it's probably one of the topics we're going to be discussing today. You need that fresh thinking. And I think if you can bring in fresh thinking and a different approach, that just adds to the quality of the leadership around the table and also the way that we think we're going to go with our strategy going forward.
Yeah.
So yes, I was completely new. I even would say, do I get excited by cars? Yes, but I'm not a major car fanatic.
Yeah.
They get me from A to B, and I like to have a nice car. But that wasn't a driver. I just thought it was a really, really interesting industry. And I'm really pleased I'm in it. I don't think I'll move out of the automotive industry now. It's just so fascinating.
No, I mean, now is the time, right?
Now is the time. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, speaking of cars, I've got down, this is a light little question to kick us off, but in many ways it is the only question in town. EVs, electric vehicles, electric cars. What are your thoughts? Do you have an EV?
Well, it's interesting because there was clearly EV's been a topic for a while, and I used to go on stage and do panels, and I get asked that question. And embarrassingly enough, previously I would say no, I don't, but I'm trying to say I've got one in order.
Yeah.
However, I do now have. So we were a household of two cars. My wife has a car, I have a car.
Yeah.
Interestingly, if you think about it, we both had German-made cars,
Right.
both ICE engines.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, I have thought, well, when's the right time to change to an EV? Range anxiety. I'm the sort of person that would probably get halfway full on a tank of petrol and go and stop and fill up.
Mm-hmm.
Wife's the opposite. She would probably wait till it's almost on red and then fill up.
I like the sound of her.
Yeah, exactly. But normally it's when I get in her car and I find out it's red, and then I'm the
true,
one that's
that's
going, right, I've got to go to it. Anyway, so however, I do now drive. So we've made a switch.
Okay.
So we both drive EVs. So
Oh, you both do, right?
both. So we've
Okay.
taken ICE out of the household.
Wow, good.
Now, what's interesting there, though, we went from German ICE, and this probably tells things that's going on in the
Yeah.
industry. We've gone for effectively Chinese-owned brands and both EVs.
Mm-hmm.
So I now drive a Lotus Electra.
I saw that out there.
Yes.
Snazzy.
Well, fun. I mean, very fun, very quick. The reality is I'm really dull, quite to be honest, because it was one of the largest boot spaces on the market for an EV SUV.
This is why a lot of people buy their EVs.
It's
Practicality.
It is the practicality. And my wife now drives a Volvo
Mm-hmm.
EV, but again, that's Geely owned.
Yeah.
So they're both fundamentally Chinese cars. And it was interesting, all right, a survey of one, but ICE cars, German, EV, both owned by Chinese companies.
And also fascinating. I mean, we're not here to talk about individual brands, but
No.
while we're here talking about individual brands, Lotus, for me, we don't need to talk about Lotus strengths or weaknesses, but Lotus, what has happened to Lotus, that you've got this niche British petrol heady motorsport focused brand. Look at the evolution it's undergone and what you've got now sitting outside your house, and that to me is a kind of bellwether for the industry, and who knows what's going to happen in the next decade.
Well, this is it. I mean, think about Lotus, as you say, they were their sort of reputation was on lightweight cars. This car's almost nearly 3 tons.
Yeah, and huge big SUV.
But yet you get on to 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. It's just nuts.
And so, do you have a driveway? Do you have home charging?
I do have home charging. I'm lucky enough that also have 3-phase at home, so it's a 22 kilowatt. So actually, I can charge the car in. It probably takes sort of 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
But the beauty is as well. I looked at it. I mean, we're not talking about brands, but I had a BMW X5 before. Fill a tank of petrol up that, you're talking over £100.
Yeah.
I can fill up this now. It's a 112 kilowatt battery, and I'm filling this up for like £10.
Yeah.
I get a full tank
On your off-peak.
on my off-peak overnight from 12 till 7.
We've all become complete nerds about this jargon.
We are, yeah, exactly. And all of a sudden, so that is a massive benefit. I'm saving an enormous amount of money on fuel.
Tell me about it. And
Yeah.
you've got a beautiful car. I'm a big fan. Can you quickly describe, well, not quickly actually, take your time. Can you describe for us the services that Cox Automotive provide across the UK and Europe, and how EV battery solutions fits into that? Because, I think I've been a motoring journalist for 25 years, and Cox Automotive for me as a brand was always in the background somewhere along the way. But then I didn't understand how it fitted, all the subsidiary brands fitted into it, how it's
Yes.
kind of partly B2C, partly B2B. It seems to underpin so much of the industry. Can you give us an overview?
Yeah, I will. I mean, like you say, I think we'll take the US out of it because the US is slightly different. And obviously, the US does have a more B2C brands, and the US has the Auto Trader brand and the Kelly Blue Book. If you think about UK and Europe, where we've probably, and since I've come on board, I've probably tried to take us out more of the B2C marketplace and concentrate more on the B2B marketplace. So I think probably what most people know us for, and sort of more of the power brand, I guess, is Mannheim. So we are one of the largest auction companies, certainly in the UK and across Europe. With that, though, we also have our JV with Auto Trader here called Dealer Auction, which is more of a digital auction marketplace. So we have, from an auction perspective, you can imagine most people know that as what auctions are. You drive a car through a lane, there's an auctioneer banging on, and they're trying to get buyers to buy that car. So we do that on a very much physical environment, but we also do that on a digital environment.
And I never know with those. This is a really dumb question, but I feel like there are no stupid questions,
No.
especially not beyond the battery. Um, with the auctions, is that retail? Is that private buyers or is that dealers coming through? Is that the money?
Yeah,
The
we
supermarkets?
don't open up to sort of the public, as we
Yeah,
say. So these
this
are
is
all
trade.
this is trade. These are dealers coming in to buy stock so they can put on their forecourts to then sell on to a consumer. We hold a hard line ourselves from our business that we will never ever have a car ourselves and sell it on to an end consumer. That's for our customers to do. We sell cars to our customers who are the trade and the dealers of the
And that
world.
could be that could be dealers, it could be supermarkets, it could be
Absolutely, yeah.
everyone.
Anyone that's looking to sell cars on. So that's a big part of
Yep,
our business. But then as an add-on to that, and you're here today at Brunton Thorpe, which is effectively what best part of 700 acres
it's
and
big.
35,000 cars that we're holding here. But we have a large business with the what we call Mannheim Vehicle Services. So that's everything from what you might call as PDI or the prep of new car distribution. But the big bulk of what we do here is effectively vehicle services. So effectively the remarketing or the defleeting of cars. So think about the big OEMs, the manufacturers that will have cars that are coming back either through their rental companies that they do deals with or management cars. They could be anything from 6 to 3 years old. They will come back into our site and we effectively get those cars back into issue. So think about repainting, cold dent repair, alloys and getting those back up, tyre replacement, windscreen replacement. So getting those cars either back into what we would regard as a very good wholesale condition for retailers to sell or even to retail condition for retailers to sell. And we do that en masse for most of the large or for predominantly a large of the manufacturers across the UK marketplace, but also some fleet and leasing businesses as well.
Right. Okay.
So that's that sort of side. And then,
Yeah.
of course, within that, you've got to have adjacent industries. So you've got to have logistics around that. You've got to have things called inspect and collect. So you can imagine big fleet and leasing companies that might have the consumer have the car. They have to hand that car back after they finish their finance period. We have send people go out to the public. They sort of look at the condition of the car, inspect that car, grade it, and then we would then take that car back into one of our compounds on behalf of our fleet and lease or our OEM customer. So there's all the things that wrap that around. Then we've got other aspects that we have in our retail world. So we have companies like Code Weavers, which is think about. I mean, Code Weavers is a really smart company, but they do a lot of the underpinning of the finance industry, certainly online. So with finance calculators. So everything around that. We also do used vehicle locators under a brand of Modix. So we are in that kind of that retail space. We have a fleet management kind of platform that's called Fleet Master that runs across Europe and another 8 or 9 markets. So we're very much on that collective retail side. And then we have a company called NextGear, brilliant business, which helps dealers think about their funding plans and their stock plans for acquiring cars. So we help them literally put cars on their forecourt in a very kind of finance efficient way. That allows them to build their forecourt and stock, and then effectively they would sell that car, and then they would repay kind of the monies that or the car that we've effectively loaned them. So that's a
Blimey.
big part of the business
Well,
there.
it's not wrong when I knew that Cox Automotive was kind of underpinning all this stuff going
Yeah,
on in the industry.
yeah. I mean, everyone's sort of, if you think about the industry itself. I mean, unless you work in it, you don't know who we are. But when we work within the industry, we actually do run a lot of that ecosystem. And then, of course, we've got one of our new areas, which is the EV battery solutions,
Yeah.
which is something that we've really started to get into over recent years, which was triggered off by an acquisition that we made probably about 5 years ago now, which was a company called Spears New Technologies, which was one of the very, very first companies to get into understanding sort of battery repair and remanufacturing.
Which was a smart move because my goodness, I do a lot of consumer facing broadcasts. I answer consumer questions live about electric cars and whether consumers know it or not, underpinning all of their concerns from reliability to residual values to safety to range anxiety, it's the battery.
It's the battery. Yeah, and this is it. If you think about it, an EV car, there's not many moving parts ultimately now
Mm.
compared to a combustion engine. You effectively have a battery, some drivetrain, some wheels, and off you go. But yeah, the batteries we regard as obviously the most expensive part of an EV. And as you've rightly said, it's the one that's probably causing either the manufacturers the most concern, but also more importantly, you'd argue the public
Mm.
and the consumer of EVs is one of their biggest. And it's still an embryonic business. We're still in the startup phase ultimately. And there's so much that either the industry doesn't know, suppliers like us are still trying to find out,
Yeah.
but the angst for the consumer that really doesn't understand about EVs
Mm.
and the batteries
Mm.
themselves is.
And as I always say to retailers and OEMs, consumers, one of their first questions is going to be, okay, what happens if the battery needs repairing? What happens if there's a recall? What happens if, and uh, retailers and OEMs need to have the answers there and then to convince the consumer that this is the right purchase for them.
That's right. And I think you've got obviously, because you're right, you've got a lot of trade press at the moment, haven't you, around recalls and related to the battery. But the reality is, one thing we're learning as we go, there is at the moment there is no instruction manual on this. Nobody's done this in the past. If you think about
Mm.
how long combustion engines have been around, that's a very mature industry. Everybody knows how they work. We can repair them. We know how much it costs to repair. There's many places you can do that. EVs themselves is such a specialist area,
Yeah.
which is obviously a threat or a concern for some, but obviously opportunities for companies like Cox
Huge.
Automotive.
Yeah.
But everybody is trying to learn along the way. So
Mm.
we are
Mm.
breaking new grounds in the services that we provide, and we're learning every day. But we know that our manufacturers that we work are learning all the way. Even the battery manufacturers are still trying to understand and learn on this. So we're all in this sort of journey
Yeah.
together. But if you think about the history, I know you might say EVs have been around for a number of years, but in the history of cars, we're still
No,
really trying to sort of understand how we're actually going to navigate our path,
absolutely.
because you and I both know, certainly UK and in Europe, EVs are inevitable.
Yep.
The discussion is still
Yep.
being had in the US right now about the speed of that adoption and where it's
Yes,
going and the
it
political
certainly is.
landscape. But we know here in UK and EV, that train or that horse has already bolted. This is
Yeah.
this is now
Yeah.
coming. So we have to adopt and we have to evolve.
Yeah.
Otherwise, all of a sudden our business is at risk.
It is an extraordinary time, though, isn't it? Not least for consumer confidence,
Yes.
because consumers need their hand holding in a way that they never did with petrol and diesel cars at every stage of their research into electric cars, right up until they're buying, they're sorting out the finance, all the way along. They've got questions. They've got questions around insurance.
Yes.
Insurance premiums are linked to how quickly those repairs can be carried out and how quickly that can be dealt with. There's confidence needed there. There's also confidence needed around sustainability questions, and a lot of the sustainability questions that consumers have come back to battery and battery sourcing and so on and repairs. And confidence is key, and behind the confidence, underpinning the confidence, is knowledge, and that is what the industry has got to impart to consumers in a easily accessible way. And so when they walk into a dealer, it's everything from what's the carbon footprint of the car to what's the backup situation for when something goes wrong with it or I'm in a crash. And retailers need to be able to say, well, we're working with EV battery solutions to provide that. So
Yes.
you don't need to know a lot about EV battery solutions as a consumer, but you need to know that we're in partnership with these guys and they've got our back
Yes.
collectively to sort things out.
Yeah, that's right. And I know you sort of look at it and go, "Oh, is the industry doing enough?" Now, there's obviously people like yourself that are out there, and you're talking about EVs and helping to sort of communicate that through to the consumer. But there's still a question, I think, whether the manufacturers themselves are helping enough with helping I guess, the Joe public of
Mm,
today.
mm,
If my mother was walking into to buy an EV, I mean, she would just be frightened to death of the
mm,
fact. And, I don't think she will understand enough. And I think retailers are starting to do a good job,
yeah,
but you have to walk into the retailer often and then they will depart that
yeah,
information.
yeah,
What's going on in the press? What are the people
yeah.
reading? Because at the moment, what they're reading, they're picking up on and what makes the press a lot of the time is some of the negativity
Yeah, tell me
around
about it.
EVs.
Yeah. And that's where this collaboration comes in, doesn't it? We might
Yes.
all have our bits of the industry that we're working in, but if OEMs and retailers are not collaborating with the media at one end, EV battery solutions at the other to provide this cohesive kind of joined up narrative for the consumer, we're not going to transition to mass sales of EVs anytime soon.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, right. We stray. We've got to get back on track. Here we go. Um, so, what are the biggest infrastructure or service challenges you see when it comes to scaling EV support across Europe? And how is Cox going to go about solving them?
Yeah, well, there's two things. I mean, I think I look at it in two ways. I mean, one, obviously, there's Cox Automotive and what we need to do to ultimately support our customers, because that's our job. We've got to help navigate this change to EV. We've got to help our customers navigate through that. But there's also the infrastructure of what helps the adoption of EVs and
right.
what's going to help the consumer, what's helping the OEMs, what's helping the battery manufacturers. Now, if you look at it from our perspective, I look at this. I mean, take for example here. So we've got just shy of 700 acres. At the moment, I look at it and say, right, are we set up for the EVs? So this car park's changing. 35,000 vehicles over here right now. And you'd probably argue that maybe 80%, maybe even 90% of the cars out there are ICE. However, I know in 5 years' time, that car park's going to look very different.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting point that all of a sudden, as we start to see more EVs come through, we need to think about the infrastructure from power.
Yep.
Because we know that we have to have a car here. It's not like if the tank's empty, you fill out with some petrol or some diesel. All of a sudden, we know that we need to charge cars. We have to send the cars out charged for our customers. Well, we've got to think about number of charges. So you think that's fine. We'll just put a load of charges into our footprint here. But then what about the network and the actual electricity cables that are coming into here? Can it actually cope with the amount of charges? Well, actually, yes, it can at the moment, and we've had to do a lot of investment so far, but we know at some point we're going to be capped out because the grid will not be able to take or give us enough power for what we need to support something like this.
You and everyone else.
So, and everybody else wants this, right? And we're in this is an airfield. It's kind of like in remote, it's up in Bruntingthorpe. So we need to think about how do we solve that problem? So we're already having to apply and get ahead of it of saying, right, solar power. So solar power is one thing that we need to do that. But remember, we're in the UK. I mean, if you look at today, the sun's disappeared and it's cloudy. So solar power will offer a certain amount during certain hours. So yes, solar power investment, huge level of investment to do that. But then if you've got excess of that, what do you do? So you probably need battery energy storage systems, so BESS. So you need to invest in these storage systems that will need to be put onto our footprint. And then one of the things we're really looking at, which up here would be great, is the windmills. So actually sort of using the wind to harness the power and put some, but all of that takes time because you've got to have the investment. Up here, you've got to have the authorization from the local authorities,
planning
and the planning and the paperwork. That's years in in process. So we actually have had to start now to even think about what does it look like today, but what does it look like in 3 years' time? What does it look in 5 years' time? And that just gives you the idea of one site. Now, we've got 20 odd sites across our UK, whether it's you doing vehicle services like we do here, or whether an auction site where we have cars coming in. So that's a big point from the way that we're thinking about it. And clearly we need to go, I need to go and ask our US parents, we need a lot of money to invest in this. To set ourselves up. Now, that's one aspect. Secondly, understanding the battery. We have a car that comes on site now. We can open up the bonnet and we understand the engine. We have mechanics, master mechanics. We can fix anything on the car. All of a sudden, the battery comes in. Well, that's a different kettle of fish altogether. One, you've got to have the expertise, and the expertise is there's lots of mechanics out, and we're all fighting for mechanics. Everyone's fighting for mechanics.
Yeah.
But then now all of a sudden you're going to be fighting for the expertise on how you just batteries. But then also it's about the safety concerns about batteries and how you drop a battery out of a car or a vehicle, how you then open that battery pack, how you deal with that. The fact that battery pack would need to take all the energy down from a cycler, and that's a specialty piece of equipment. So the infrastructure that we're looking for in our business, not only just to undertake the services that we do today, where also commitment is how then do we help our manufacturers navigate through that. So we're also having to do all that investment, and thus this sort of investment in EV battery solutions to help them provide and help them navigate the EV landscape as it evolves.
Yeah.
So it's a huge drain on our financial resources. So we need the investment that we need to do when we've obviously got lots of areas we need to do it on there, the human capital that we need. And is there enough in the marketplace in the training that we need to undertake?
I did keep telling my teenage boys they need to train to be EV technicians.
They
They
do.
will never be out
They
of a
will
job in a
never be
nutshell.
out of
Yeah,
work because they will, people will fight
yeah,
for them.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, at the moment, I would say, I mean, this is probably, if you think about it in an industry's perspective, this is probably the biggest. I mean, I'd say certainly in my time in the automotive, which is what, just over 10 years. But actually, if you look back over the 10, 20, and you've got a lot of understanding history of it, you could probably see and agree that this is probably the biggest
Mm,
transformation or disruption
mm.
in the automotive market space that we've had in years,
Yeah, I
in
think we're only
years.
just beginning to understand how big it is actually,
Yeah.
and you can see that from consumers. The way in which this is a whole new purchase form. It's not just another car. It's a different way of thinking about
Yes.
transport, and we ought to be thinking as an industry how we're going to support them and get our heads around that. Which leads me on to, EV battery solutions is a bold move, but a necessary move. We're in bold times,
Yes.
he who dares wins sort of thing. Um, so what have been the learnings so far? I think maybe you've touched on some of them when it
Mm.
comes to integrating specialist EV capability into what is
Yeah.
a very established organization.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I mean, we had to look at this, and you could see, though, I mean, obviously, we have a lot of very smart people around in our organization. We got ahead of this maybe 7 or 8 years ago, where we said, look, we know where the market's going. Um, how do we play our part in this?
Yeah.
So we started to look at businesses, and to be honest, and look, Cox Automotive are a business that probably we sort of acquire businesses and we integrate them. And as you look around the marketplace, there weren't that many. And Spear's new technology at the time was one of the ones that were leading on, sort of thinking about where the marketplace is going. So, how do you understand the battery pack?
Yeah.
And they had technology, and they were sort of more advanced than a lot of the other companies out there. And they had technology where they could understand down to an individual cell level the conditions of the batteries, but it
Yeah.
was still very small scale. But with great insight, great strategy, very intelligent people, way ahead of where the industry was. So it was a business that we acquired, and then of course we've started now to evolve that. So it went from Spear's New Technologies to Cox Automotive Battery Solutions. It actually started in the Netherlands. So it started in Ada in the Netherlands, and then they moved out to the US in Oklahoma. So we've now decided, obviously, we brought that in. In the US now, we've got 4 large centres for this, huge centres for battery solutions. And in Europe now, we've got Ada, and we've opened up one now in Rugby, which is the
Mm,
largest
mm.
EV specialist centre. We've done that in a
Huge.
cooperation with DHL,
Mhm.
because part of what you need to think about in this is not only, a big part of it's the battery pack itself and understanding all of that. We can get onto that. But there's also the logistics side
Yeah.
to this.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things what we're evolving, when we first got into this world, we really started to see it with recalls.
Yeah.
So, and recalls was very much a case of, and one of the biggest ones was, I think I can say it now, it's all on the World Wide Web, but GM with the
Yeah.
Chevy Volt
Yeah.
had a huge, and I think they had about 120,000 recalls on battery packs,
Yeah.
which we helped them navigate in the US. So
Significant.
so absolutely massive. So that really managed to cut our teeth in this now. And I think over the last sort of, if you think about our collective history with Spears to where we are now, we've probably dealt with and with over 1 million battery packs,
I-
which is way ahead of anyone else really in the
Yeah.
industry. And I didn't make this quote, but there was the founder of Spears made a comment that said the only people that understand or have more data on battery packs than us right now related to EVs is probably Tesla.
Mm, mm.
Um,
I was going to say, I'd love to get hold of all your data as a
yeah,
journalist. I'd love to go scrummaging around in there.
there's a lot there.
We're so nearly out of time, and I wanted to get your thoughts on a couple of things briefly. From where you're sitting, what are the biggest blockers, do you think, holding the industry back from really accelerating EV adoption? Maybe if we just focus on the used side of the
Well, if we've
market.
got, first of all, I mean, take EU and UK. One, obviously, we need a stable policy government policy to make sure that there is clarity on that, because I know that's been a bit up and down, which hasn't helped with the manufacturing side of things. So I think we need that. But the big adoption clearly is around the consumer. And we do need to really kind of educate and change. So if you think about all the things like range anxiety,
Yeah.
it's a huge issue and it still exists.
Yeah.
I still have it. Like even when I'm driving the EV, there's range anxiety. The charging capability. Now, it's all very well if you have a house and you might be able to put a charger in. There is talk at some point when it starts to get that you'll live in a street and you'll think, oh, I'll get an EV charger, and say, actually, you can't because there's too many now in this street and the network doesn't cover it. So what about the network and the charging? What happens if you live in an apartment? How are you going to have an EV and charge? Are there enough charge points that you can do this? The cost of charging on the motorway, actually, we talk about it's great when you charge at home, but if you're charging the public,
It's painful.
it's actually painful and it's expensive. So there is this issue. But the big point as well is you think about used EVs, that has a real issue with adoption at the moment, because obviously there's this whole thing about residual values. And I think residual values on EV needs to be resolved, certainly in the used car space, because at the moment, although it has improved, there is way too much supply and not enough demand. And I think this is often residual values is a real concern. So I think there obviously needs to be some support, and probably government support. Now, government have now, certainly in the UK, have put more support around new EVs, although at certain thresholds, which opens it up for certain markets and certain brands, discuss. But if you look at places like where they've had residual values on EVs for used cars problems, Netherlands have now adopted, and they're actually supporting and have grants, government grants to support around used EVs, and it actually has solved a lot of the problems. We now need to start, where's the government support across other markets in the EU and the UK, which will allow support around buying a used EV, not just all on new. So there's a lot of still adoption that needs to happen around the consumer. But it's like anything, if the consumers demanding the EVs, then of course it makes life easier for the manufacturers and the retailers and everyone else to adopt and evolve, because as we said, we know that the rules are changing and the manufacturers don't have a choice. They are having to make EVs and sell with the Z mandate.
Yeah. There's a whole other episode. Finally, so if we're sitting here, you and me at Bruntingthorpe 5 years from now, on a sunnier day maybe, what would success look like for Cox Automotive in the EV space?
Yeah, we need to be, well, number one, we need to be established as the market leader. Now that means market leader in thought leadership. So OEMs and battery manufacturers coming to us to think about thought leadership and how they deal with batteries and as they go forward. We should be seen as one of the largest or the largest provider of battery services. So if you think about we're repairing batteries and remanufacturing batteries, we should be seen as the go-to in order to support with that. And that's going to typically be OEMs that be our customers, battery manufacturers, but also fleet and leasing companies. So they should be looking to come to us. But also we should be able to seamlessly deal with EV vehicles in all of the current businesses that we do as today. So our auction environment, our vehicle services environment, because although we see EV battery solutions as a specialist area now, it won't. EV battery solutions will effectively converge into what we call business as usual. It will just converge into, it is part of our auction world. It will converge into being part of our vehicle services world. ICE vehicle turns up today, we can do the mechanics, repair the engine, and repair parts about the vehicle. Our customers are going to expect to say, well, it's just an EV car that we've got. You need to be able to deal with all of the body and cosmetic, but the EV battery is just part of it. You just need to deal with it. There's an expectations. That's not even going to be seen as a specialist service. So that's how I would see what success looks like. And also all the infrastructure concerns that we have in the investment has been put in place, that we will be able to deal with that growing EV marketplace or the car park.
Yeah. There's a lot to be done, but may we live in exciting times,
Absolutely.
as I think they say. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute joy.
Yeah,
thank you for joining me today. And thank you for watching. Please remember to like and share this episode, and follow EV Battery Solutions Europe on LinkedIn and YouTube to keep up to date with the rest of the series.